Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. It's time to jump into the second group of weekly challenges for GT7, of course refreshing every single Friday. This week we have some fairly easy and quick races, followed by a 30-minute mini endurance over at Road Atlanta. In terms of the rewards, we do have the best possible reward available, that being the 6-star free car ticket. So let's jump into an overview for this week. As you can see, we begin with the Sunday Cup over at Broad Bean Raceway. Then we move over to the FF Challenge 450 over at Autopolis short layout before going into one of the new 1.52 events, the Evolution meeting at Kyoto Driving Park. We then have a brand new special event in the form of the Roadster NA1 make, this time over at Suzuka circuit. And then to finish, we have the Group 1 prototype challenge over at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Now, in terms of the rewards this week, for completing one event, it's going to be a 6-star parts ticket. For completing 3, it's 150,000 credits. And for completing all 5, is going to be the 6-star roulette ticket car reward. So in terms of the events themselves, it's going to be 4 fairly quick and short events overall, followed by a 30-minute endurance race, and that one can be quite difficult on the harder difficulties. Of course, as always, I will try and keep as close as possible to any of the PP ratings or the cars themselves, and in terms of the events, I will run them on said hardest difficulty. So we're going to jump in to event number 1 of this week, which is of course going to be starting off nice and easy at Broad Bean Speedway or Raceway for the Sunday Cup. In terms of the event itself, it's one of the beginner events for GT7, of course aimed at some of the slowest cars in game, and in terms of the length, it's only a 2-lap sprint. If you use one of the faster cars in game, you can get this done dusted in probably less than a minute. In terms of my car of choice, I went for one of the Abarths. I believe this is sort of like the A112 or something that it's called. I don't really use it much, but I decided to give this one a shot. So in terms of the event itself, it's super simple. It's a very easy layout, if not one of the easiest layouts in the entirety of Gran Turismo 7. It's a bit of a half oval shape. You will have this sort of big banked corner that will switch you into a right-hander before getting back on the banking. Now in terms of the cars themselves, they are relatively slow overall. However, I did still have to put a racing exhaust on this car to be able to win the event. Originally, I ended up second and had to rerun it just for the fact that, you know, I didn't actually record the initial gameplay either. So a bit of a mess up by me, but relatively overall, if you're using something a bit quicker than the car I'm using here, you should have no issues whatsoever. The only car you may need to watch out for is actually one of the Toyota Aquas. Originally there was 2 of them running and they do seem to be much pacier than anything else in the race. However, we did have a drag race to the line and we just narrowly took that win, and that's going to give us a nice easy first place. In terms of the event itself, a very low paying 7,500 credits for this one, and of course you will receive that parts ticket upon its completion. Moving swiftly into event number 2, this is the Japanese FF Challenge 450 over at Autopolis International Racing Course on the short layout. Of course aimed at 450 pp cars that must be Japanese and must be front wheel drive. So of course your best choice here is going to be one of the numerous Honda Civics or the Integra Type R. So there are also cars like the Suzuki Swift, which is pretty viable overall, but I would recommend going with one of the Hondas, and that's exactly what I did, going for the 1998 Integra Type R for this event. Absolutely spot on for getting this one done and dusted. So this is a fully stock 98 Integra. In terms of the rest of the field, there are 7 AI vehicles over a very short 2-lap sprint. Now the majority of them are super slow, there is just no denying that. The likes of the Prius, the Honda Fits and the Demios aren't really going to give you a challenge. However, up front there is a few of the front wheel drive Hondas, mainly the Civics and the Integras, that might be building up a fairly sizable gap whilst you're working your way through the initial part of the field. The main ones you want to watch out for, seemingly in this race, is the other Integra and the Civic SIR, which will definitely give you a fair good run for your money. As you can see, we're coming to the latter stages of the event. We've only just got past the other Integra, and then we're going to try and go around the outside of the Civic EG here. As you can see, we're going to try and hang it out nice and wide and just eventually get that position covered off. At that point, you should be home safe and dry. As you can see, almost a 2-second lead by the time we come up and across the line. Overall, this is a fairly simple and short event. That is tick number 2 of the week. In terms of the payout, it's not too much for this one. 37,500 credits with that clean race bonus over 3.8 miles. Moving on next to event number 3 of the week. This is one of the new update 1.52 events, namely the Evolution meeting over at Kyoto Driving Park. Probably one of the more difficult events of that menu book, just mainly due to the fact that it is over the super long layout, deceivingly so. So of course, your car of choice has to be one of the Evos in game. I went for the brand new Evo 8 just as my personal preference. This is using my 700pp Le Mans build, which I feel is absolutely fantastic at the majority of the tracks in game. And it would make pretty short work of the entirety of the field. So there are 11 AI opponents on the track over a 3-lap sprint race. Again, the track is deceivingly long. Whilst it might not seem too much, you're looking at around about 2 minutes plus per lap, and that is quite big for a track that really isn't overall that complex either. It just combines both layouts of the track into one. Now, in terms of the main AI opponents that you might need to watch out for, they are definitely going to be the front runners. Now, in terms of their gap, they will build it up quite healthy over the portion of the event. So the sooner you get yourself up there, the better. If you kind of wait it out or you're not using that much of a competitive car, there is a good chance they are going to be very much well gone over that horizon by the time you do end up in around about 2nd to 3rd place. You will definitely need to run upgrades on your Evo as well. Usually anything over about 650 pp should work. Whilst the majority of the AI are fairly rapid overall, I find that anything over that is pretty much the sweet spot for this event. Now, in terms of the majority of the field, some of them do seem to be, hanging back. So you're going to hit a lot of traffic on the initial few laps before it starts opening out to those bigger gaps with the lead pack. The majority of the time, you're just going to be picking off the cars one by one, so it shouldn't be too difficult to actually net that clean race bonus. As you can see, by the time we got to the first stages of lap 2, I was already starting to make moves towards the lead pack, and as you can see just by the track map there in the top right, just how much of a gap they'll start springing out to the rest of the field. So with one car left, it was time to just make that move and get ourselves into the lead. We had much superior acceleration, and that gave us the advantage on that straight there. And at that point, it was all about just taking it nice and steady, keeping it clean to build up over a 20-second gap after the 3 laps were done and dusted. That is going to be tick number 3 of the week, and 70,000 credits without that clean race bonus. Not really sure how I lost it there. We're also going to get 150k on top of that for completing said 3 events. Moving into the brand new special event for this week, this is at Suzuka Circuit for the Mazda Roadster NA, of course the first generation of the Mazda Roadster. Now, there are 2 options you can go with. You can either go with the touring car or the road going version. I do recommend the touring car as the majority of the field will actually be fielding those. However, there are some road cars in there as well. They are pretty unbalanced overall though. I did notice that the majority of the road cars kind of sit at the back and just drop off as you go through. However, there is actually one of the leading ones which seems to be much quicker than the rest of the field. Also, with the new 787B swap, that's exactly what I used in the Roadster touring car. It does make the event a bit more fun than it typically would be, considering there are only 10 cars on grid, that including yourself. So there's really not much going on here. The only real issue here is Suzuka itself is notorious for overtaking being pretty difficult. Apart from that, pick them off one by one and you should have a fairly easy event here. Whilst the event does take place over 4 laps, I honestly think you'll be moving up through the grid fairly quickly considering that lack of opponents, and once you're at the front it does seem like the rest of the field will just drop off with the back markers almost half a lap behind. It's ridiculous how spread amongst the performance it really is. You'll have some cars that are sort of dawdling around and some of them that are fairly quite quick, but honestly this is a fairly easy event overall. So as you can see, at the end of 4 laps we had a massive gap to the rest of the field with the 787B swap, tick number 4 of the week, and although we didn't get the clean race bonus, we still net 120,000 credits and do get our daily marathon, which unfortunately was a 3-star. That's going to move us into the final event of the week. This is at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta for the Group 1 Prototype Series. This is a fairly tough and long event overall. It's a mini endurance at 30 minutes on a time limit. I do feel since update 1.49 and some of the changes to the cars that this event is definitely tougher than it used to be. So in terms of my car of choice, I went for the 787B. Definitely not the best round here. It will make short work of the actual straight where we're going to get majority of our overtakes done, and of course we do have better tyre life and fuel consumption than pretty much the entirety of the grid, and that's really where we're going to try and make up most of the time by pitting as little as possible, saving as much fuel as possible, and just trying to get the jump as the AI will pit around about 3 times a race. As you can see, we're already on lap 10 here and we're making the jump through the grid up to P4, unfortunately picking up a corner cutting penalty there. We're then going to drop into the pits at the end of lap 10 after running fuel mix 6 down to the maximum amount possible. So at this point we've got next to no fuel in the car. We're actually not going to replace the tyres at this point, so I'm on the mediums and these are good for around about 20 minutes before they start dropping off majorly. So I'm just going to pit, take fuel and see where we come out. Now at this point we should have worked our way up through the grid a bit more than we would have done obviously running the softs. They would have dropped off much quicker and we would have just had to take that bit extra in the pits by changing the tyres, even if it is only just a couple of seconds. So here we go, we're coming out the fairly awkward and long pit lane up the hill and we're going to come out P9. So we've worked our way back up to P4 once again. At this point we're going to box in for the final time at the end of lap 18 and we're actually going to go for the softs at this point. So my strategy is not really working too well and really I'm aiming for around about 3rd at best here, but it's definitely going to be punishing to get ourselves there. So once again we're going to fill the car to full, and that's because we want to run the softs in fuel mix 1 for the final 8 minutes of the event. So at this point we're going to turn it up to fuel mix 1 and push as hard as possible to try and recover something from this event. Of course the AI will be pitting at some point, so although the gap's going to be fairly quite sizable once we come out the pits, we can still make it up with the extra added pace of not having to slog ourselves down in fuel mix 6. So we come out 7th after the pits. We're going to quite quickly make up some of that time, and as the race goes into night we're aiming to get into 3rd place. As you can see we're aiming to overtake the Nissan, which is currently caught up in a bit of traffic. That's going to work in our favour with only a couple of laps to go as we dive into 3rd place. Have to save a bit of fuel in fuel mix 6 for the final lap, but we do manage to hold on and take P3 there. That's tick number 5 of the week, 128k for 3rd place, and of course the free car ticket reward. So let's go and dive into said rewards as we open up what we've got for this set of weeklies. So of course first we will open up our daily driving marathon. This is going to be the 3-star roulette ticket reward, typically the worst ticket you can get once you hit collector level 50. Then in terms of the reward itself, whilst I would have liked the Subaru, I do unfortunately end up with 10,000 credits, so rather quite disappointing with that one, but it can only get better from here. So we're going to add that to the account and then move over to the first reward of the week, which was the part ticket. Now once again the majority of the stuff here is pretty useless, however we are going to get the part exactly that we wanted, which is the level 5 weight reduction. This is actually going to be for the Bugatti Chiron, which is actually quite useful and worth a decent amount at 500,000 credits, so I am not going to complain about that. We're then going to add the 150k to the account and then finally open up the free car ticket reward. Again, this can reward some of the best cars in game, and unfortunately some VGTs as well. Now, in terms of the cars here, I'd either want the SLR or the Bugatti, and thankfully we do get one of the better rewards on this ticket. Definitely not the best one I've seen, but I'm not going to complain at this car at all. It's a fairly decent VGT, even if the majority of them are fairly terrible. So there we go, that is the second set of weekly challenges for October. A big thank you to all of my channel members listed on screen now. I hope you have a fantastic start to your weekend. Take care, guys. Peace.